Seeing him bow down to this woman screaming at him, swearing in his face, was so disturbing. It was so humiliating. I felt so humiliated for him because she was screaming, "This is our home. What the fuck are you doing? You're not making this safe."
And it's not her bloody home. The university's not a home.
Right.
It's not a safe space. It's not a secure space. None of that. And if that when a university isn't a home, that's not what it is. It's a place to be confronted by, I would say, often horrible ideas. You want to learn about history? You think that's going to be safe? Do you know what human history is like? It's an endless bloodbath with a certain amount of hopeful progress underlying it. It's a horror show, and great literature is like that, and biology is terrifying, and physics is terrifying, and you want to be safe. It's stay home with your mom, stay home with your dad. Don't come to university if you want to be safe. Because
don't even go outside.
No, if the university is going to make you safe, then it ceased to be a university. So one of the things I try to do in my class, I have this class called Maps of Meaning, which concentrates on atrocity, basically, on Soviet atrocity and Nazi atrocity mostly. And what I try to do in the class is to teach my students that had they been in Nazi Germany in the 1930s, they would have been Nazis. And had they been offered the opportunity to be an Auschwitz camp guard, then maybe they would have leapt at it. And maybe they would have been in the more sadistic proportion of the Auschwitz camp guard population. You think that makes you feel safe? It doesn't make you feel safe to know that Nazis were humans and you happen to be one of them. And so I think that educators that tell students that they're offering them a safe space are doing them a profound disservice. And I'm a clinical psychologist, and here's one of the things you do to make people less afraid. You don't make the world safer. What you do is people tell you what they're afraid of, and then you break it into little bits so that they can go confront them. So maybe they're afraid of going to a party, and you break that down. You say, well, do you know how to introduce yourself? And they say, well, I don't really even know how to shake someone's hand. And so then you practice having them shake their hand and introduce themselves, because maybe they weren't taught by their half-witted parents when they were young, because they were ignored. And so then you say, well, maybe you can go to a party for half an hour and all you have to do is introduce yourself to 2 people, and we'll call that success. And you build up their competence and their confidence one step at a time. And what happens, the clinical literature indicates quite clearly, is you don't make people less anxious by doing that. You make them braver. It's not the same thing. You don't make the world and its horrors smaller. You make the person and their capacity to deal with horror larger. You encourage them. You strengthen them. That's what you do at a university. You arm people with arguments. You hone their intellect. You help them learn to write so they can marshal their arguments. You help them learn how to engage in intellectual combat, because that's better than engaging in real combat. And you make them hard and strong. You don't mollycoddle them and make them safe unless you're their enemy, unless you're trying to devour their spirit. And that's what we have in the universities. We have the reign of the Oedipal mother who's answered everything is, oh, just come a little closer, dear, and I'll protect you from the world. It's just like Hansel and Gretel's, the witch in the Hansel and Gretel story. Well, my house is made of gingerbread. Just come in here and everything will be fine. Well, she feeds you candy to fatten you up so she can eat you. That's the archetype of a modern university.
When did this start? When did the trigger warnings? When did the safe spaces? When did all this emerge?
Well, it has its roots in the student radicalism of the 1960s, especially the far left radicalism. It really popped up in the 1990s, in the early 90s, when I was teaching in the U.S. at that point. And
which university?
I taught at Harvard from 93 to 98. And there was a fair push for political correctness, especially in the early part of the 90s. But it got pushed back down and disappeared and went underground. It went underground is more accurate. And then it's just come back with a vengeance in the last 5 years. And I think it's partly because we have all these radical left political activist departments at the universities, women's studies being at the top of the list, that have done nothing for the last 30 years. It's even longer than that now. It's almost 40 years, 30 years, let's say, have done nothing but produce a never-ending stream of ideologically minded counter-civilization political activists. And that's all subsidized by tuition and by the public purse. And that's another thing we really got to ask ourselves is why the hell are we subsidizing revolution? Why are we doing that? It's crazy and it's dangerous. It's dangerous.